Hi there, this is Matt the Game Explainer. Today I'm going to be showing you The Pillars of the Earth. It's based on a book by Ken Follett. The game was originally published in 2007 by Mayfair and Kosmos, and the game was designed by Michael Rennick and Stefan Stadler. The reason I'm covering a game from 2007 is because this is a worker placement, kind of Euro-style game that, when it came out, was very well regarded. But after a few years, it went out of print. However, the good news is, here at the end of 2017, it was announced that Cosmos, in its current form, is going to be republishing the game. And from what I've been able to understand, the republished version is going to be pretty much identical to the original. And so what I've got on the table here and what I'm going to be running through for you today is the original version of the game, but it should be, 98% the same as what the republished version is going to be like. So, as I said, this is a worker placement game. It's for 2 to 4 players. It takes roughly an hour to an hour and a half to play, depending on the number of players. And basically, the whole idea of the game, like I said, it's based on a book, and the book was set in the early Middle Ages in England, in a fictional town called Kingsbridge. And in the book, one of the kind of central themes of the book was that the prior of Kingsbridge, I believe it was Prior Philip, wanted to build a new cathedral in the town. Okay, and so each player represents kind of a building crew that is contributing to the building of this new cathedral. But however, of course, you're competing with the other builders to be the best at it, right, and earn the most victory points throughout the course of the game. So the way you're going to be doing that is each player will start the game in front of them with 3 craftsman cards. I'll show you those in a second. You'll also have 12 laborer workers, and then you'll have 3 master builder workers that start in this bag over here. So that's what each player has at the start of the game. You're also going to have a certain amount of gold, which is tracked on this money track here. And you also start with 2 victory points. That's because it is possible through certain things to lose victory points in the game as well as gain them. So you start with a couple. And then the board itself, you've got a main board here, which is laid out with a number of different worker placement areas, numbered 1 through 14. And then you have a number of other components like wooden cubes to represent resources, and of course the cathedral itself in the center of the board. So let me go ahead and actually show you that cathedral. Now, I will tell you that my current cathedral, I painted it gray and put some stickers on it that another fan of the game created and put out on Board Game Geek for other people like me to use. So when you buy the game, the cathedral pieces themselves are just plain wood, but there are easy ways to kind of dress it up and make it look really awesome like this. So I'll show you a couple pieces here, like the main entrance of the cathedral. You've got like a door there and some windows. Whoops, like I said, I painted it gray. There's a roof piece that goes on top. And so you're probably asking yourself, okay, so what's the point of this cathedral? Well, other than being kind of the central theme of the game, right? It's actually used to track how many rounds have already gone by in the game. So the game takes place over 6 rounds. There are 6 pieces to the cathedral. Okay, so at the end of each round, the start player will place a cathedral piece out on the board like that to mark the fact that 1 round is now complete. When the second round is done, they'll take a second piece and place it on the board. So again, this is kind of, visually and thematically representing that over the course of 6 rounds, the players are actually building the cathedral, collectively. But again, it's not a cooperative game. It is a competitive game because you're trying to earn more victory points than the other players. Okay, so that's the whole point of the cathedral pieces. I'm going to remove it off the board so you can see the board better. So what is the flow of the game? Well, over these 6 rounds, each round will have 3 phases. The first phase is the phase where we're going to take our 12 laborer workers and allocate them to different spots on the board to either have them bring back resource cubes in the form of sand, stone, or wood, or they can also go to another spot to earn some cash. Okay, so that's really what you're doing with your laborers. You can also, there's a couple of new craftsmen that can be hired in this first phase as well. All right, so I'll show you that in more detail. And then the second phase, we're going to use this bag here to have the players take turns placing their master builder workers out onto the main board. And in this case, in this type of worker placement game, when you place your workers on the board, you do not immediately resolve the spaces. You're just reserving those spaces. And then in phase 3, we're going to then go ahead and resolve the board following the numbered spaces from 1 through 14. And that's it. So it's actually a very straightforward game, just 3 phases per round. And, it's pretty easy to kind of get right into it. So let's go ahead and take a look at these craftsmen a little bit more closely, these cards down here. And so I can kind of explain how you're going to use them to convert the resource cubes into victory points. So each player will start with the same 3 basic craftsmen. All right, and these are what they look like. So you start with a stone cutter. All right, and each craftsman will tell you how many resource cubes they can convert into how many victory points and how many times each round they can do that. So in this case, your basic stone cutter can turn 2 stone cubes into 1 victory point, and he can do that up to 4 times each round. All right, so at the end of phase 3, there's going to be an activity where all players are going to take their craftsmen and their resource cubes and use those together to generate victory points. And then, of course, you'll return any cubes that you've used back into the general supply. Now, each player can only have 5 of these craftsmen in their crew at any one time. So you start with 3, and again, you can hire them throughout the game. But if you ever hire a 6th craftsman, then you're going to have to dismiss one that you already have. The other 2 that you start with are a woodcutter, which obviously converts wood into victory points, and then a mortar mixer, which converts sand into victory points. Now, one thing you'll notice is, as I explain the game, you'll see that sand is the least expensive resource to get, but it's also the least efficient to convert into victory points. Like your basic mortar mixer, he has to convert 3 sand to get 1 victory point, whereas the other 2 guys only can get 1 victory point out of only 2 cubes. So they're a little more efficient. But sand is cheaper to get and easier to get than wood, and then finally stone is the most difficult. So part of the strategy of this game is deciding, what combination of craftsmen you want to have on your crew, and therefore what types of resources you're going to have to try and go and get every round so that you can continuously crank out victory points round after round. Now, in phase 1 of each round, what's going to happen is we're going to place 2 new craftsman cards out here. And there's a deck of craftsman cards that comes with the game. They have numbers on the back, right? So for round 1, you're going to use the 4 round 1 craftsmen. You're going to put 2 of them down here, and the other 2 go up here on the board. And then in round 2, of course, you'll use the 4 for round 2, and then round 3, and so on all the way to round 6. So the whole purpose of this, and then besides those 2 craftsmen, you're going to shuffle up a deck of 9 resource cards and place 7 of them below the board. The resource cards look like this. It will tell you how many of your laborer workers you would need to send to which location on the board in order to retrieve this many cubes. So for example, if you were to send 5 of your laborer workers to the quarry, then later in the round, they're going to come back with 2 stone. And then, of course, you'll be able to use those 2 stone with your craftsmen to turn them into victory points. Now, the reason for these cards is the way this first phase works is the start player, in this case red, I just randomly determined that, and then it goes clockwise around the table. So the red player would go first. He can either select one of the resource cards and place the appropriate number of his laborers onto the board, or he could pay money to hire one of these 2 craftsmen. So if we look at these 2 round 1 craftsmen, right? These were round 1. the cost to buy them in gold is up here. This one costs 2, this one costs 5. And then down here it tells you what they do. Okay, so let me just show you this one, for example. This mason can turn 1 stone into 1 victory point. He can do that twice per round. So obviously he's a little more efficient than the mortar maker, the stone cutter, who requires 2 stone to make 1 victory point. This guy can make 1 victory point out of only 1 stone, but he only gets to do that twice per round. Okay, so maybe you want to add him onto your crew. If you do, you pay $5 for that. Once these 2 craftsmen have been purchased by players, then there's no more craftsmen that can be purchased during phase 1. It's just those 2 guys. All the rest of phase 1 is basically just selecting these resource cards by using your laborers. So let's say, for example, when it gets to the green player's turn, maybe he wants to take that quarry card that would give him 2 stone. Now, the laborer workers, each player has 1 larger meeple here that is worth 5. I can't get him to stand up. He's worth 5, and he's worth 1. So you have 7 of these, 1 of these. So I could take this bigger guy that's worth 5 laborers. I could put him in the quarry here, and then take this quarry card, right? Because now I've spent my 5 workers, and I'll take this card. Later in the round, I'll get my laborers back, and they'll come back with 2 stone. But for now, I just keep the card by me as a reminder of what I'm going to get. Now, the reason for that, the reason you don't just take the cubes from the board right away, is there are event cards that are going to come up here at the start of phase 3 that can affect how successful those laborers are at their efforts. Okay, so it might increase what they bring back, it might decrease, or it might not affect it at all. That's why you just take these kind of reminder cards. So we'll keep going around the table, each player selecting 1 card from this display or passing. And once everybody's passed, then phase 1 is done. Now, as you can probably imagine, because each player has 12 of these laborer workers, not everybody's going to use all 12 of their workers to claim these resource cards. Maybe the green player, when it comes back to his turn, he has 2 laborers left, and he has no cards left here that he could claim. So what does he do with them? Well, as I mentioned, there's a spot on the board called the wool mill where you can place as many laborers as you want, and then later on in phase 3, those laborers are going to make you money, 1 gold per laborer. So maybe he'll place these 2 guys up here in the wool mill, and later in the round, he'll get a couple of bucks for that. Okay? So, again, once everybody's passed, we move on to phase 2. Now, phase 2, very straightforward. The current start player, in this case red, he'll take this handy-dandy bag that comes with the game. And in this bag are 3 master builder meeples for each player. And they look like this. Okay, and there it goes. Okay, we'll draw another one. Here's a master builder meeple. And each player has 3 of these in the bag. Now, the way it works is, let's say the first one that's drawn out of the bag happens to be red, right? And the red player is first. So at this point, the player whose meeple was chosen out of the bag has a choice to make. They can either pay the current cost shown on this cost wheel here to place this master builder on a master builder space on the board. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom the camera in so you can see the board a little better. Hopefully this works. Okay, that's a little too zoomed. Okay, so there's the board. Now you'll notice there's a lot of white circles on the board, like here, there, up here. Those are all the master builder worker placement spots. So if you wanted to pay the current cost, right, you could go ahead and place your guy on one of those spots, reserving it for you. So let's say he wants to, put it there to claim that card. So he would pay 7 gold, right? He'd reduce his money by 7, and then the price on the wheel would drop by 1 from 7 to 6. Now, the other thing that the player could do if he didn't want to pay $7 or didn't have $7 to pay, or 7 gold, instead of reserving a spot, he could simply say, you know what, I'm going to pass. So he'll put his guy on the wheel in the 7 coin spot and drop the price to 6. So either way, whether he places on the board or he passes and places on the wheel, the price is going to drop by 1. Then that player with the bag would draw the next master builder out of the bag. In this case, let's say he draws a blue one. So now it would be the blue player's choice to either pay 6 coins to reserve a spot on the board, or pass and put his guy on the wheel. And again, either way, the price is going to drop to 5. Right? So let's say he passes and the price drops to 5. Now, another one's drawn out of the bag, and in this case, it's yellow. Okay. So now, one thing I wanted to mention, through this whole process of drawing master builders out of the bag and having them being placed out on the board, the start player, the player who's managing the bag, one time and one time only during the round or during this process, can take a master builder that was just drawn from the bag and say, nope, I'm going to throw this one back in the bag and draw again. Okay, so he has one opportunity to reject which master builder was drawn and, try and draw a different one. So once he's done that for the round, then that's it. Okay. The reason for that could be, and it's kind of like a first player privilege. He might have one specific spot on the board that he really wants. So he's hoping to draw one of his master builders first. Or, maybe he doesn't want his master builder drawn first because he doesn't want to have to be paying a lot, right? Or having to pass right away. So maybe if his is drawn first, he's like, nope, I'm going to throw it back and try and get something else. So it's just a little twist to the game there. But in any case, we're going to keep going through this process of drawing master builders and either placing them on the wheel or paying money and placing them out on the board until the bag is empty. Once the bag is empty, okay, and also just so you know, once the price wheel has been reduced to 0, then all master builders that are still in the bag that are drawn at that point will be able to be placed on the board for free, right? So if your master builders come out later versus earlier, the benefit of that is you're going to be paying less money or possibly no money, right? So there's kind of a balancing mechanism there depending on, your situation. Now, once the bag is empty and there's no more master builders in the bag, then we're going to go back to the wheel and start placing the master builders that were passed, right, and placed on the wheel. And we'll start with the top, whichever one is furthest towards the 7. That player will place that master builder for free. And then the next player will place, their master builder for free, and so on, right, until the wheel is empty. So once all master builders have been placed on the board from all players, then we go on to phase 3. Phase 3 is very simple. All you're doing is resolving the board. Okay, so all the master builders will be out on the board somewhere at this point in time, and we just resolve the board. The first step is to draw and resolve the random event. So let me grab one of those cards and show you what they look like. So like this one says, each player loses 4 gold. Okay, some random events are negative and some are positive. Okay, the positive ones look like this. They have a red seal on them over here. Okay. Now the reason that's important is if a player chooses to go into the number 2 worker placement spot, which is up here, the Archbishop's office, then as soon as the event card is drawn, the player that went to the Archbishop's office has a choice. They can either allow the event that was drawn to affect them, either positive or negative, and by doing so, they get to take a resource cube from the market over here. Now, if you can see at the start of the game, the market starts with 3 sand, 3 wood, and 3 stone. So by going to the Archbishop's office, you're either guaranteed to get a free resource cube, or you can get immunity from the event if you so choose. Okay? So obviously, if it's a negative event and it's going to hurt you, you might want to take immunity, but then you don't get the free resource. So you have an interesting choice there. Then we resolve the wool mill, which is, again, the spot where players can place laborer workers from phase 1. And then in phase 3, we're going to resolve that space. And for each worker there, you're going to get 1 gold. Okay? And then the workers come back to you. Then we resolve number 4 spot, which is right here. These are privilege cards. There's going to be 2 privilege cards face up at the start of each round. And so players can look at them, they can know what they're going to do, and they can decide if they want to try to go get them with their master builder. So, for example, let me grab this stack and show you what these privilege cards look like. So each privilege card is going to be either an ongoing effect, a one-time effect, or an immediate effect. And the icon in the corner tells you which it is. So this is a one-time effect, which means when you get the card, when you take the card, you can hold on to the card and then use it one time when you so choose. So in this case, you receive 1 metal or 6 gold. So you can hold on to this card until it's advantageous for you to use it, or you could use it right away. A card like this one has the infinity symbol, which means it has an ongoing effect. This one says each round you receive 1 additional wood production. So during the production portion of this phase 3, when you're collecting your cubes from the board, you're going to always take 1 extra wood. Okay. And then finally, there are these like lightning bolt cards, which are immediate effects. So this one just says you immediately receive 3 victory points, and then the card is discarded. So these will obviously be shuffled and placed out on those 2 spaces at the beginning of the game, and so there'll be some amount of variation from play to play. The only thing that doesn't change is there's always going to be 2 specific cards available in the last round. They have this special symbol in the corner, and one of the spots will give you 1 medal. And I think the card for the other spot always gives you a stone and a wood. Okay, so you players who are experienced with the game know in the last round there'll always be a spot to get a stone and a wood, and there'll also be a separate spot to get a medal. So anyway, those are the privilege cards. We resolve that spot. The player just takes the card if they're there. Then we resolve down here, which is the priory, and one spot will give you 2 victory points. The other spot gives you 1 victory point. Finally, we're going to get to the forest, the quarry, and the gravel pit. And that's where, again, if players, sent workers there, right, and claimed these resource cards at the bottom here, now their workers are finally going to bring back their work for the day, which is going to be either wood, stone, or sand. And then, of course, you retrieve your laborer workers back into your supply. Then we're going to move over here to the King's Court, okay? Now, the King's Court is where you can get the metal resource. Metal, in this case, is represented by blue cubes, and it's a very precious resource in the game, right? It's hard to get, but it can be worth a lot of victory points if you can combine it with the right craftsman. So there will be higher-powered craftsmen that come out in later rounds that require metal in addition to other resources to produce higher victory point type cards, okay? So that's what the metal is all about. So there are 4 spots here at the King's Court. 1, 2, 3, 4. The first player to go to the King's Court each round goes up there. And when you resolve the King's Court, they get to take the metal cube, okay, the blue cube. And then a new blue cube will come out every round. Now, the other thing that happens is, the start player is going to roll this die. It's numbered from 2 to 5, all right, with an emphasis on 3 and 4. So they're going to roll the die, and that'll be the taxes that everybody has to pay this round. However, if you sent one of your master builders to the King's Court, you are exempt from paying taxes. So that's actually very nice. Because like in this case, a 5 was rolled, so every player would have to pay 5 coins unless you went to the King's Court. Okay, so that's the whole purpose there. Then we go on to the spot number 10, which is where you can get additional craftsmen. Now, the craftsmen down here at the bottom, remember these you had to purchase with gold during the first phase. But during this third phase, if you claimed one of these 2 master builder spots, then you just get to take the craftsman card. Because the idea there is you may have had to pay some money, right, to place your master builder on one of these 2 spots. But even so, it took up one of your 3 master builders, right? So even if you placed them for free, it's still one of your 3 master builder actions for the round. So anyway, you can get craftsmen from up there as well. Then we go up to the spot up in the corner here. That is Shiring Castle. There's only 1 spot there, but the player who goes there is going to earn 2 additional laborer workers for the next round. Okay, so they look like this. They're just 2 little gray guys. You're going to add this to your laborer workers. So instead of having 12 workers, next round you'll have 14. And then finally we go to the market up here, again, which starts every round with 3 sand, 3 wood, and 3 stone in it. There are 4 numbered worker placement spaces on the board. And let's say, like the blue player went there, then the red player, and then maybe, the green player. Okay, so let's say they went there in that order. So when we resolve the market, what's going to happen is the player who went into the number 1 spot, the blue player, he can either buy or sell one type of resource in whatever quantity he wants. Now, again, he can either buy or sell one type of resource, but in whatever quantity he wants. So what that means is he first has to select, am I buying or selling? Let's say he's buying. And then he has to decide, what am I going to buy? Sand, wood, or stone. Let's say he wants to buy wood. He can buy up to 4 wood because there's only 4 wood available in the market. So if you're buying from the market, what you see on the board is what you can buy. That's it. When it's gone for the round. At the end of the round, we will replenish the market. So let's say he buys 3 wood. Okay? Puts that in his own personal supply. The price of the goods are 2 for sand, 3 for wood, and 4 for stone. Now, those are the prices whether you're buying or selling. You can also sell metal at the market for 5 each. All right. So let's say you collected a couple of metal from the King's Court, but you ended up not getting any craftsmen to use the metal on, so you can just sell it and get money for it. So metal is always valuable either way. But anyway, once blue has done his first buy or sell action, then it goes to the next player, red. He can then do a buy or sell action, and then it would go to green. He would do one buy or sell action, and then it loops back to blue, right? And so it keeps cycling through the players at the market. They can be buying and selling, right? One action at a time until they're all done doing what they want to do. Now, the other restriction at the market is you're only allowed to buy or sell one type of resource each round. So, you can only buy or sell each type of resource each round. So, for example, the blue player, because he bought wood as his first action, he now can no longer sell wood this round. He could wait until the next game round, go back to the market, and then sell wood, but he just can't do it now because he chose to buy wood instead. So the market actually gets resolved usually pretty quickly. Then we go to step 13, which is actually using your craftsmen, right, and whatever resource cubes that you've acquired to convert them into victory points. So you're going to spend your cubes, use your craftsmen, generate victory points. And we'll mark that over here on the victory point track. And then we'll go to step 14, which is the start player spot. So if one player decided, to go to the start player spot, then they would become the start player for the next round. Otherwise, the start player would rotate one player clockwise. And then that's it. So at the end of phase 3, we reset the board, right? You'd refill the market. We'd put out new privilege cards. We would shuffle the 9 resource cards at the bottom here of the board and place 7 of them out, randomly. We would put out the new craftsmen, 2 here and 2 here, and you're ready to go on to the next round. So after 6 rounds, whoever's got the most victory points, wins the game. That's about it. The only other thing to mention is, like during the taxation phase, if you don't have enough money to pay the taxes, then you're going to pay 1 victory point for every 2 coins that you were unable to pay, rounded down. And I think that's pretty much it. So it's a really, really cool game. It's a very basic, worker placement type game. But I found it to be a lot of fun. The book, by the way, is excellent. If you ever decide to pick up a copy of The Pillars of the Earth, read the book, and then everything in the game is very thematically tied to the book. So it really makes the game come alive if you've read the book. But you don't need to have read the book to enjoy the game. It's very solid. So again, that's The Pillars of the Earth. And like I said, the reprint that should be coming out here, hopefully early in 2018, is from Kosmos. And if you get a chance to play it or pick it up, I hope you enjoy it. Have a great day.